Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of A Cup of Joe. My name is Joe Escobedo, and with me on the show today is Davinia Khong, who is the Senior Marketing Leader at Backbase, based here in Singapore. So thanks so much for being on the show, Davinia.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about this one because we're doing things a little bit different. You're going to be sharing a case study, your story on how you were able to make more than $1 million in active pipeline in less than 180 days with only one research report. So very, very excited. You talk about some of the challenges, some of the learnings you made on a kind of limited budget. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it. Love to hear more about the story.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me, Joe. I just want to say that first off, initially I wasn't so sure because, Backbase, we're new in APAC, but then I thought, let's not compare. It's just about sharing with the fellow community.
Yeah.
And it's stuff I wish I knew starting out, and you don't learn any of these things in school. And let's be honest, most of what you learn in B2B marketing is on the job or through additional courses that you take after university.
Yes.
So happy to be here and share my guinea pig experience. Yeah, so let's go into it.
Awesome. So yeah, I guess the question is, how did you even come up with the idea? Because, in B2B, there's so many different things you could be doing. There's so many different channels like that. It's very easy to get inundated. So how did the idea actually come to be?
Well, there are two parts to it. I think for me, the first thing that came to mind was it needed to be something that contributed to the industry. It had to be educational. And I honestly just did basic research, did a bit of Googling around and asking around. And there really wasn't anything at the time on the topic of fintech and the digital landscape in APAC that was summarized in a piece. Like, I think there were bits and pieces here and there. People were talking about, new digital banks and neobanks in a very singular fashion, but there wasn't anything that talked about comparing them to the incumbents and having real insights and data, both from the APAC and country level. And so for me, I wanted to lead with data points and not a product push.
Mm.
The second thing was also I had a very small budget and tight resources. So for a lot of B2B marketers, you know what I'm talking about. How do you get bang for your buck? You've got limited advertising money. So the way I went about it was I wanted APAC insights, but I also needed country-specific data points and insights as well, because localization really matters.
Mm-hmm.
I had, in my previous roles and more established corporations, been at the receiving end as a marketer, having to push at the local and regional level these global content that really didn't hit the mark. It would make some noise, but it didn't quite resonate with the market, the media, the customers, but we had to do it anyway because it was a global endeavor.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to move from that and move away from creating, regional only content. I really wanted something for the countries, and the only way to do it was to kind of jam pack it into a research piece.
Mm.
And so that was where I came from, and I wanted it to be a contribution to the industry, something that people would actually want to read. So that's how it all started.
No, like I said, it makes perfect sense because I think one of the big challenges a lot of times is everyone and their mother is doing, research reports and ebooks and B2B. So it's really about how do you come up with something that's different, that something is not talking about, and something that you can't easily Google, which I think is a really, really difficult thing to do. But I guess it sounds like you spoke with, maybe clients, partners to understand what are some of the challenges and what are some of the questions they're having and try to address that.
Yeah, I mean, if I think about my competitor, I won't name names, but they came out with a global report, right? And talking to friends who are on that side, I have connections there. It's great in terms of patting yourself on the back at the global HQ and say, oh, we came out with this thing. But if you really talk to the countries, it really didn't get a lot of buzz. It really didn't get a lot of interest. And that is where the rubber meets the road. The local markets, the local salespeople really need that. It's not so much a generic kind of global topic with no specific insights. Just like a lot of blogs today, you see a very catchy clickbaity headline, you go in and you realize, oh, there's no case study. There's like just a couple of these are the 5 top things you want to do. And this is going to solve all your problems in the whole world. And it doesn't. It's stuff I could have written. So I really made an effort to move away from that.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. And I see a lot of this big mistake in a lot of B2B companies is they try to cast a very wide net and really catch everyone. And the content is very generic. It's very vanilla. And in fact, it doesn't actually help the business. Like you said, it may, whoever put it together may feel great, but the people who are on the front lines who are dealing with customers and prospects, if they don't have enough local insights or local research to showcase, doesn't really help them close a deal. So I love that you're thinking about it from that perspective. I'd love to hear what are some of the local nuances or things that you put in there that you think was helpful to the sales guys.
So I definitely had an APAC view to kind of consolidate that as a whole, to kind of, show that, look, we're also looking broadly, but then the country specific points were really targeted around what's the outlook and what are the opportunities. So, people are always curious to know what's your predictions for the year. And people always come up with like that year's predictions, like 2020 or 2021, right? The trouble with that is it goes outdated very quickly. So my tip to you is kind of go further so that your asset or pillar asset or research piece has more longevity. And it's something you could always keep rehashing and perhaps change the next year if there's something new to it. If you said like state of digital in, fintech and digital banking in 2020, I'm telling you at the end of the year, it's super outdated and it's really not accurate. But if you have something that's further down the track, like 2025, people kind of latch onto that. And so that was also where I went towards. Like we actually had an existing piece that was called Banking 2025 that did really well, both on awareness and lead generation. So I said, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's, take something that people actually are interested in and just add more local flavor and content to it. So we made sure that there was actual data, specific data about what's happening in the country and what is the potential opportunity, and making recommendations. So it's all very nice to say, oh, this is what the world's going to look like. But if you don't give a recommendation, you don't give self-discovery questions, it's also not very helpful. And that also saves you the time from having to create another asset piece, which is typically like guidebooks. They always tell you like, here's a playbook on how you can do it. Just it all in, you don't have to do many, many different research pieces.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think the best research reports, the ones we've worked on in the past as well, are those that integrate the how-to into it as well, because data points are nice, but it doesn't really tell you a story and doesn't really tell you what you should be thinking about or what you should potentially be doing. And I think that's where a lot of research reports, particularly in B2B, really miss the mark. So I'm glad you picked that up. One thing that I want to get your thoughts on is because, if it's 2025, particularly now, a lot of executives, maybe this was pre-COVID, I'm guessing, but like now in terms of like a lot of executives are like, what can we finish this quarter? Going back to what we were talking about in the last call, like short-term sales pressure, short-term sales pressure. So how do you balance that with, executives' short-termism in terms of their outlook versus saying, okay, let's plan for 2025 when a lot of companies are struggling to stay afloat nowadays?
So are you talking in terms of the banks as a customer, or are you talking about our our management, internal management, in terms of, wanting something immediate?
So I think we'll talk about the audience first, because I think so the audience, you said, I think the 2025, it definitely helps them look at it from a broader point of view. I'm wondering, how do you balance that with people's, particularly now, the mindset of how can we close business or how can we generate revenue like this quarter? A lot of CEOs I've spoken with recently had that mindset recently.
Yeah, I think for the banks, they do want to look at a solution. And correct me if I'm wrong, if I understood your question, you're talking about, our clients as the banks wanting to have a solution immediately rather than something 2025. But I think even if you have like an outlook that's 2025, the fact that you're thinking ahead, you could tell them you can stay ahead of the game. And this is some of the things you can do right now to make sure that you're ahead. This is what we're predicting will happen. And these are our recommendations and some of the self-discovery questions that you need to go through, and we can go through with your internal stakeholders to make sure that you're considering the right questions when you make that investment. So I think the idea of having something that's 2025 was to say, look, you have to invest for the future. And the way to invest for the future is to invest now. And these are some of the things that we're seeing based on, what we've observed in the market, what we've surveyed in the market, based on all the research that we've put together. And so these are some of the actionable steps that you could potentially take now that could put you in a better position, maybe a year from now. It doesn't have to be till 2025. So you'd definitely be ahead of the game. I think the great thing about Backbase is that we do a lot of accelerated projects that, happen in less than 6 months or 10 months. We can create a minimum viable product within 6 months. So that way it feels tangible at the same time when you're still talking about 2025. So that's how we balance it out in terms of delivering to the banks who are our customers. Does that answer your question? I hope.
Absolutely, yes, that makes perfect sense. So if you think of like, Everest, reaching Everest in 2025, what are some of the things you need to do to prepare for that? So how do you get on Basecamp? What are some of the milestones you need to achieve? So thinking about it from a, I guess, smaller, like you said, even 6 months increments will help you reach your ultimate, vision or goal in 2025.
Exactly.
Got it. No, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think it goes back to internally as well. I'm sure there was some sales pressure. I mean, there's always sales pressure in B2B to sell kind of short term. So is this something that you kind of the ebook had discovered in the past? And you mentioned it, the previous one worked quite well. So use that as kind of a basis to generate kind of shorter term leads. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So one of the things, that a lot of people know me for is I'm all about this 180 days. Like, how do I get everything I need in 180 days? Because the reality is that as much as I love the whole long-term brand, and short-term combination, we don't have years and years to prove ourselves as B2B marketers. I think, most of us don't have senior management in a company that's very patient to wait for those long-term outcomes. And so as much as I love and completely endorse the teachings of Les Binet and Mark Ritson, who are the godfathers of marketing, achieving it day to day is not possible. And so it's really important that you think about your 180 days in 2 parts. And that's how I did it for my research piece. It has to be a mix of both broad and targeted approaches. So one is, as most people know, is the always on layer. These are the ads, the retargeting to get the lead gen and the awareness and top of mind. Even if you don't have a lot of money, I say to a lot of people, even if you don't have a lot, put something there, because you don't want to find yourself in a place where you have 0 kind of engagement moments or leads coming in. And, sales, as you said, will always put a lot of pressure on you. And try to get a mix of third-party data and first-party data sources. Like a lot of us, we put content out there, which is third-party data, and that's fine. But you want to make sure you're getting actual first-party data, the actual, very high value, high quality leads and contacts into the pipeline as well. The second part to the 180 days is called the wow factor. So you have an always on layer. And then while you're having that, you work towards your wow factor. And this is where I get inspired from B2C. They do these big bang campaigns end to end. And this is where B2B, we could learn from them. For my campaign, I had a teaser, I had public relations. I did the launch first at an APAC level, and then I did country launches subsequently. So that kind of helped to lengthen or at least stretch, the interest of the report. I had, a lot of interactive assets. I had an interactive landing page. I had a quiz. I had infographics. I had visual benchmarking. And so for launches, it's all about, that new and fresh feeling as well. And I also shared it with some clients beforehand just to make them feel special and say, hey, we've got this really cool report coming out. Because you're a client, we want you to see it beforehand, which is a little risky, but most of them, really keep it to themselves and look at it, and they really appreciate that. And I also shared it with, other fintech and banking influencers, people who publish on their own personal sites and have a lot of following as well, to see if that's something they're interested to share. And there's no hard sell in it. I say, if you like it, share it, but this is really for you to just read and gain some learnings out of it. I also got sales involved to do the sharing. We did lots of videos, emails, of course, native content integration. We did webinars. We even did direct mail to select folks as well. So it is a lot of effort. And that's why I call it the wow factor, because you do need maybe, 2 months or so to get it all ready, and to kind of plan it out as well. But I want to be careful here, because I don't want people to think that, oh, let me go do another research report. This isn't a magic bullet. I think we listen to a lot of podcasts and, read blogs about certain assets, and we try to copy and replicate it. And I think it's really important that you make it your own and make it relevant to your target audience and your company at the same time, because it's one thing to create something really fancy and flashy, but it doesn't drive, the outcomes that matters to your CEO and your sales leaders as well.
No, I mean, brilliantly said. I think one thing you did, which I want to, talk about again, is the way you flip the script. So I'll give you an example. One of the tech companies we've been speaking with, they're having 36 webinars and the same amount of ebooks a month. And I'm like, there's little to no promotion. There's maybe one social post that goes out on it. So you're like, they're wondering why they're not getting numbers, not getting traction. Whereas I think you kind of flipped the script upside down and you said, how do we create one piece of content that is validated with the audience? And we think it's going to be super helpful. And why don't we have almost like a movie kind of release? Like you're thinking like a, big blockbuster movie. Like what are some of the things we need to do to build buzz, to get excitement beforehand? And you're absolutely right. I think a lot of B2B companies don't do that very well. I think B2C, if you see what Lazada and Shopee are doing right now for 99 sale and stuff like that, it's crazy the amount. So like my wife,
I wish I had an engine. I can only do so much.
I'm curious in terms of resources. What kind of resources? I mean, obviously you as the kind of the brainchild and the architect, but what are some of the resources that are required to build something like this?
Well, the thing is, for me, I think one of the biggest challenges of this whole endeavor was that I lacked a lot of in-region resources. I think a lot of the creating of the visual assets that had to be promoted was very much based at my headquarters. That's something I think a lot of marketers can relate to if you don't have that mandate to do it in region. Obviously that's changed now. I'm onboarding somebody in region, a company in region, to help me with all of that. But at the time it was really, really tough. I think the main resources I really had was getting a really strong PR agency to really work with me. I had really strong copywriters. And to be honest, I think, the team that I have even at the HQ in Global was really great. Like they really worked hard to pull it off for me. So, the whole idea, what I'm trying to tell you is that even with very little resources, you can do really well. And, don't be disheartened, just kind of, make do with what you have and then grow from there and build from there. And you can easily onboard new resources as you go along. And as you prove the results from your campaign like this one.
It's a very good point. I think for any lean teams, you can always expand on what you're doing. You don't have to put together a 50-page, I don't know how long that was, but like, you don't need to put that. You can put a smaller one, see if it works, pilot it, and then, you can splice it up or you can grow it depending on your resources. So yeah, very good advice for anyone who thinks they have to put out a massive piece with a one-person team. Like, it's not possible.
Yeah, I mean, if I think of Intercom, they, going back to the point about like having big bang effects throughout the campaign, what they did was every month they created this whole wow factor effect. And I was just so jealous because they had the resources to do that. Whereas for a lot of us, we can't really do that. We could probably do it like one time in the next, first half of the year, and maybe one or two more if we really stretch it in the second half of the year. So I would say definitely prove yourself, get the results, grow your team, grow your resources, then you could have more of these wow factor moments throughout the year, hopefully.
No, I think brilliantly said. Like I said, I know you're very good at documenting all your learnings. Like, I would love, like, if you created like a checklist of like the Big Bang Theory, like what went into it. Like, I'm happy to share that, include the links, because I think that's one thing that you do very well, is kind of make everything very tangible and very easy to understand, because you've already done it and you know what works and what doesn't work. So not to put anything else on your plate, I know you're very busy, but I think a lot of marketers would find that super helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I am working on it really, really hard. I'm trying to figure out how to make it really quick and easy for very busy marketers to kind of learn and get some quick wins, because you know it's really tough right now. I think we all have a lot of pressure from sales, and I'm pretty fortunate that despite all of that, you know, we still delivered during COVID. So that was really great. I think what's ironic, I think that for me, Joe, is that COVID-19 worked in my favor. Being stuck at home and
Yeah.
lockdown, that's when the consumption of digital content kind of shot up across the board. And so when you have something that's, you know, not so readily available, or as I said at the start, it isn't something that people have put together, and it's new. And when you share it, it was just perfect timing. I was very fortunate as well with that. And I want to say that, you know, I guarantee you that, you know, the quality of leads will actually improve over time.
Mm.
You know, I think a lot of people, when they embark on a full-blown campaign, they think like, oh, this is too much effort, right? Let me just focus on my really top performing channel, let's say LinkedIn lead gen ads. But what I want to tell them is that your other channels, your multi-channel approach, will actually complement your winning channel. So if you did emails and everything else, just like a regular, you know, full-blown end-to-end campaign, you'll find that your winning channel does a lot better. And the moment you start falling short of that, your winning channel results also drop as well. And so if you try to keep that up and make sure you follow through on that whole end-to-end campaign, you'll find, and you'll hear from sales, that the quality of the leads actually improves over time. Even within 3 to 6 months, I'm very sure of that. When we launched the report, and after it came out for a while, my sales would come back to me and say, you know, Davinia, you know, a year ago, if we called a prospect and told them, you know, hi, I'm from Backbase, you know, I want to talk about this and this, let's say, like, the prospect would go, Backbase who? Who are you?
Yeah.
And they said, no, they don't get that at all. You know, they can go straight into the pitch. And so that's really valuable for the salespeople as well.
Absolutely. It's a massive, massive shift in terms of conversation. You don't have to introduce yourself. They already know who you are. The conversation becomes much more fluid and much more to the point. So absolutely. Davinia, this has been an extreme pleasure. Always good catching up with you. Last question is, how can people get in touch with you to find out more about you and what you do?
You can find me on LinkedIn, the
All
lovely
right.
world.
Wonderful. Well, after watching this, follow Davinia on LinkedIn. She is amazing. You'll learn a lot from her. And yeah, thank you so much, Davinia. And thanks so much, everyone, for watching. We will see you again soon. Until then, feel free to share this with all your peers. Take care and see you guys soon.
Bye.